Hello there, people. How are you? Welcome back to another episode of our great podcast. Today we have a bit of a personal and slightly odd subject. Um, yes, and I think this is a very specific topic because I think there are very few topics that artists cover that are so intertwined with the individual and the subjective, the political and the economical and the social as food is. It's a topic that concerns everyone and touches upon everything, and the repercussions of or the implicitness of our habits has a much larger impact than I think most of the people contemplate upon.
I guess we could almost say that it's an easy implication to overlook in everyday life, in some instances, dependent on your surroundings.
Yes, very much so. And I think, I was thinking about uh, food. Oh, it has been done. Because I was speaking like a while ago, a couple of months, well, maybe not a couple of months, maybe last year. I was speaking with a friend of mine who was working within the scope of art, and we were discussing some ideas. And that was this dimension, oh, it has already been done. But I think creating art is not about what has been done. I think a lot of artists have a very strong urge to cast light upon different topics within the world that contribute on a very large scale to the world being as it is. And I think a lot of people have needs to rectify that. So it's not about which art has been done, but what we have learned from it.
I also think that it's not an expression I like. I think that it has been done, because things being done, it's so much wider and there's so many more discussions than that. Just because a topic has been talked about doesn't mean that there's nothing else to say, different angles, different personal relations to that topic. So I think this is not a topic that has been exceeded at all.
No, I don't think so, and not in the scope, not within the context of its importance. And I think that's what becomes quite often neglected. It is the impact of this particular topic. But before we go there, let's start with saying a bit about this work. And I know that you were a bit surprised when I showed you this particular series. And I know I was as well, but I was surprised out of different reasons.
Well, how should I formulate it? I've been knowing you for probably 12 years when you started undertaking this journey. And from everything I know about you and had learned up until then, this wasn't necessarily the direction I expected that it would take. And I thought that it was much more likely that you would go in a more fine art or abstract direction. So yeah, this definitely took me by surprise. Joyfully surprised, but by surprise.
You laughed. You like it?
Oh, I enjoy this a lot. It's an absurd piece that makes me laugh. I know that there's a lot more underlying, and it's not just a happy piece. But the the sort of interesting thing about this, knowing what I know about it, is that when you walk in and you it's hard, and look at it for the first time, it's hard not to smile and to like sense a bit of the absurdity of it. And yeah, at least my reaction is that it makes me smile.
Thank you. You see, there is a very strong thing that Christian is saying there, that you thought that I would go much more into the direction of fine art. And a bit of background story to this, that if one kind of thinks about the journey that I have accounted for, the one that kind of takes you through the refugee camp and through the war and through a lot of other things, I've always learned how to be serious. You know, if it's a bit funny because I think that there are very few roles. Like if one watches movies, I think the role that I have naturally inherited has been usually the one played by male protagonists. You know, like dark, mysterious, um, very serious, very serious. And since my whole life, the only topics that I have ever been surrounded for have been of the quite serious nature, from politics to everything that kind of that brings about. Also, my mother being neurologist and psychiatrist, so that meaning that everything has been accounted for through understanding the meaning attached to that.
And could we also maybe say that you are, as a natural result by that, you probably found yourself underneath the magnifying glass a bit more than perhaps what is usually perceived by children growing up?
Definitely, and also I don't think that my Virgo, my Leo Virgo cusp with Moon in Capricorn makes this any more divergent. Doesn't allow the story to diverge in a different direction. So in the context of what we're speaking about is that I've learned many things throughout this life, many bizarre things, but I've never learned how to be fun. I never learned how to have humor, and I've never learned how to deal with humor. Which is kind of bizarre when you think about it, but I think that a lot of people in the West really never contemplate upon the dimension of freedom and ability to immerse oneself in the fantastical narrative that has been created through capitalism in a way. Just for the sake of, like, I mean, obviously you've grown up in rural Norway, so this potentially does not apply to you in that sense. But I think like what struck me most when I came to Norway, but also when I came to England, is that, or when you're faced with the American culture through TVs, is that there is very high level of immersion with the toys, like ginormous teddy bears, a lot of princessy stuff, Lego not being hyper expensive, etc., etc. So you kind of had, maybe it was expensive in Norway.
Definitely expensive, but still something that you will find in most homes.
Exactly. So, but that was never available or attainable to me. Uh, just given the just given the narrative, and when I became an artist, as we have already spoken about, my first inclinations were towards that serious art and like those dimensions, those profound dimensions. And don't misunderstand me, fundamental questions are something that is a core in at my own core, and that is what has also propelled me to write a book and do a lot of different things. However, when I was contemplating upon what I can do with, like, what type of art do I want to, not what the type of art I want to create, it wasn't about that. But as my life was kind of falling into pieces and everything that I worked very hard for not has not given the fruits that I expected it to. Um, wait, what did I want to go with this? Where did I go? Sorry, remind me.
Well, I am also waiting for where you want to go with this. We are speaking about
Oh,
how
yes,
your lack
yes.
of
I'm sorry.
fun
I'm
in your
sorry.
childhood.
Yes, exactly. So I kind of never. So I suddenly had this space where I could have my own conversations with the universe. And then I understood that these topics that I was kind of banging on in the beginning, that they were important, but I've never learned how to be fun. I never learned how to be frivolous. I never learned how to have fun. So when art kind of became that space where I allowed myself to do whatever I want, I took this direction. And for somebody who's as serious as me, that was, I think, a very interesting
It was maybe
move.
something that you yourself didn't expect as well. It was something that you discovered during the explorations that you were undertaking.
Exactly. And another thing was also that when I started working with art, it's very safe to say that I was completely blocked. I was the way I have come through a lot of things that I've come through is because I've had high ability for imaginatory immersion. I have a very vivid mind and I have a head that connects with a very high speed. So everything that I've ever done, fashion included, has been through means of understanding the flow and kind of incorporating this dimension of love within that. And because of that, I was never out of ideas. I was never like I've always understood how to navigate whichever direction, whatever happened to me, in one way or the other. So when I started doing art, which was I was supposed to do exactly what I loved, and that was being free, because ultimately for me, becoming an artist was about freedom. So when that dimension kind of surfaced, I found myself in an opposite camp. I became petrified, like utterly petrified. And it's not. And now we're laughing, but that was not funny. That was really not funny. I could stand like literally in front of the canvas for hours and days, and I would cry, and I couldn't move. I literally could not move. Although I had sketches, I knew how I wanted to do things, but there was this dimension where I was so terrified of a result going of a lot of things that I couldn't create what I wanted to create. So I kind of that in combination with the fact that I kind of acknowledge that I've never learned how to loosen up or just have fun with anything, kind of brought about this series of works that were within the same dimension as Snickels. They are absurd. They speak about other concepts other than just being a pure pun, but they also like they're very complex pieces, because on one side this whole series ended up being about food, and that was not an intention at all, nor did I look at it as such. um
But these are the things that you discover during your process and during your work with them, and when you're building relationship with the works, and then this has surfaced during and afterwards.
well, they've surfaced in a bit different way, because I used to, I mean, I still do. I am absolutely obsessed with post-internet culture. Um, and I think looking through a lot of the images of utter absurdity that people have kind of posted online has brought back some faith into humanity. Because I have to say, upon coming to London, I kind of lost it completely. And just looking through these images and seeing what type of humor and what type of this is before Instagram exploded with all the cutesy animal photos and everything that you see. So this is like 2 years before like COVID we're speaking about. And these works kind of came about a year before COVID. So I was looking through those images, and it was really interesting because the post-internet humor, the weird core, has this dimension of utter absurdity, yet it's constantly referencing I will almost call it post-contemporary narrative. And what I like about these pieces, first and foremost, like how they became into being, is that I was kind of looking at the age that we're living in, and it really struck me that we are living in a phase transition. And phase transition is something that I speak a lot about in my book as well. This dimension where we have not finished a chapter, and the new one we have just started to kind of have an overview of. So what is happening right now, this age that is semi-digital, semi-analog, is a very fascinating one, because like I'm seeing a lot of art being created in the context of post-internet, but also like a lot of digital art. But I think what we kind of are really tend to forget is that we live in an age where we don't belong in either camps. And I think that's what's golden about it. I think that's what's so gorgeous about it, that we don't belong to the digital world. Most of us are not digital natives. And then, but at the same time, we don't belong to the old school either, nor will we ever. So Snickels is a bit of amalgamation also, that like being an internet phenomenon, like because translated onto analog work on canvas, that kind of really speaks something interesting about this dimension of transfer from one side to the other. And that's how the series kind of came about. And Snickels, Fluff, and Salmonella, so those are three pieces that refers that you're laughing. What are you laughing of?
No, it's just strong names for the Star Stars series.
Yeah, I mean, this is so funny. Like, I take my humor. I was about to say I take my humor seriously, but
And I can also remember the process of them being created. So yeah,
Jesus, it took me forever. But these are my first.
it wasn't meant to take you forever. They were meant to be some quick works that you just wanted to do to sort of have these out of your system, and they kept on going and going, and it went into, how many did you say? 5 to 7 works?
Yeah, 5 to 7 works. And these are very, very fascinating for me. Because my initial intention was highly connected to just letting go and having fun. And if you kind of see this canvas, you can see that it is about that. I mean, these are such complex pieces. I think the most complex pieces I've created. But let me turn around for a second. So you have canvas, like it's gray, and then I didn't want to be I didn't want them to be perfect. I think at that point in time I was much more concerned with, like, it's a very odd time in my life, because I've just stopped being a dentist like a year and a half before we came to London, and suddenly I am an artist. But what I wanted to say within that dimension is that as a dentist in the office that I worked with, we were quite a busy one, and we were so short of staff. That means that dentists that were available would work quite a lot, and I used to have between 10 to 14 patients within the scope of 7.5 hours, 8 hours, which is quite a lot. So I've learned to work with this absolutely bizarre pace. I was yes.
Could we also maybe say that that is a very precise occupation? Like, there's not that much room for you to be offhand.
Exactly. I mean, in many ways, like, me becoming a dentist is also one of those weird twists of fate where you kind of have to laugh about it. But being a dentist meant that I was hyper precise, and also I have learned to immerse myself in the flow that has allowed me to work at a very high pace, but with a high amount of accuracy. And coming to London, where everything exists on much slower level, especially the higher up one comes, has kind of established this dimension where I came with so much energy and such intensity and such capacity to work at high pace. And it felt like coming to London kind of did not, like, that energy did not fit with how London works. So I felt very trapped by that amount, because I felt very trapped. So I wanted to pour out this energy, because, like, if you think about going back to me I've been psychoanalyzed and dealt with psychoanalysis since I was little. So that means that I understood that every single conversation that any of us have, mine, yours, his. No, actually, I'm not sure who you're talking to, but, like, you're having a cool one. But we have everything that happens is never between you and another person. It's between you and the universe, in a way. So I utilized art within that specter to try to attempt to find my coordinates again, because I understood that whatever is put on canvas and however it is being put is my own, is part of my own conversation. Although that wasn't as apparent to me, like at that point, because not all, when going to Rome, sometimes it's not clear that that's where you're going. So this canvas is a work where I have not planned it too much. I've had a sketch or two, and I had idea of how to do it, and then I started. It wasn't. It was meant for me to just pour out my energy and.
But you did do some very specific choices when you started with this. For instance, the Snickels itself is made to sort of stand out from the canvas.
Yes, and I think Snickels is made like the representation of Snickels is made in an acrylics impasto, and then it was painted over with oil, and it sticks out from canvas. And what is kind of beautiful to me is that this initial shape. Initially, I was not actually capable. Like I wasn't capable of painting in depth, and I think kind of going back to eyes. Like my eyes, like just because of how my sight is, I have not. I have very. It appears that I have very flattened experience of the world compared to.
So you experienced a lot of challenges with getting this in-depth look of it compared to how you normally perceive things.
Perceive the world. It's not about that, but I used acrylic and pastel because I thought that it will allow me to create texture that would lessen the pressure when it came to really painting this in order for it to exist within this 3D dimension. And that did not pan out completely. I still had to paint it how it did, and it took me forever to learn how to do it, especially the caramel. I mean, caramel is so delicious and luscious. I'm so proud of it. Like I'm looking at it now. I'm like, I love this caramel. I absolutely adore it. But if you kind of look at here, well, we can't see it from this distance, but hopefully you'll be able to see it in a gallery at one point. Is that the caramel was much broader. There was much more of it. And then as I was painting, I instead of sanding the background of it and changing and creating a completely smooth surface, because that's what you do when you make a mistake in oil painting. You sand it and then you start over again. I mean, there are different techniques how to do it, but with the acrylic impasto, you definitely need to do that. But
so you consciously wanted to leave the trace of what had been done before on this one.
Exactly, and this dimension of tracing is that exactly what kind of brings us back to this narrative of food, because food, like I never intended to create a series about food, but then I was looking at my 7 canvases I've made, and I was thinking, okay, these are all about food, and obviously, if I'm not sure if I mentioned it in the first episode, but in the context of post-war and after that assault, I developed a very dissonant relationship with my body, and with it quite heavy eating disorder that has been left untreated for until I came to London. And it is also it is something that I've hid from everybody, my parents including, for a very long time. I mean, until quite recently. So it is interesting that this dimension of mimetics that kind of surfaced in my work without me actually intentionally wanting to create my work about this. Yeah.
Could we say that you were also going through a process So you said it went untreated, but during this time in your life, you were actually doing quite a lot yourself to treat this. So it almost seems like your subconsciousness in some way have had a conversation about this that has then been expressed on the canvas without you really being fully aware of it.
I think, but that's the thing. Like, this is what I said, that, like, given in the context that my mother was a neurologist and psychiatrist, and I always understood that every conversation we have is the one with the universe. I understood that, like, you can utilize. Like, I was always hyper aware of my surroundings and myself within the context. So when I started doing art, it was under the parameter of me, under the paradigm of utter freedom. And it's very interesting, exactly what you're saying, that my mind, without me actually intending, went there. However, this being about food has created a space for me and for us to speak about something that you and me are very highly concerned about. And it's very beautiful to me to see how this, like, individual, the social, kind of intertwine one into another, and how it flows into a piece which is seemingly um, low or bad art, in the sense that it's not a perfect oil painting. And also you can say that, you can even say that the question of portrayal is, you wouldn't deem it to be such a serious piece from the first outlook.
I think the perfection of, or the imperfection of it, as you called it, there is very in line with the theme overall that it partially addresses, because the imperfections in it reflects the food industry. The food industry is made to be this very glossy, perfect. Like, have you ever seen a commercial of a hamburger that doesn't look perfect? And you don't need to do a lot of investigation to find out that most of the ingredients that's used on that hamburger isn't even edible. There's done so much to tweak it and to change your expression. So you have this entire dimension already baked into this, where you have the imperfections hidden around in it that is visible, and for the, you don't need to be trained to necessarily see it. It's left so that everyone can enjoy this dissonance happening in it, but you need to pay attention to see it, but you also need to understand that it is there in order to show these things. And then you have the glossy, more beautiful object on top of it that is like what you are presented with, which is this presumably nicely packed good for you dish that is then set out for you to take without looking deeper.
Yeah, I mean, so in the context of my own transcendence, because I was so tired of being, like, I've been living in this state of, like, high dissonance, where I knew there was no rules and I knew you could fly however you wanted, but at the same time I was quite anchored by my own body. And not my own, it's not just about my body that has kept me, but this fact that I have worked out throughout my whole life, like, and worked out hard, like, you can vouch for some of it.
We are talking about you having a dissonance with your body and the transformative actions you did to try to end up in what, in how you depicted yourself.
Well, within the sphere where I was recognizing my own expression in the mirror, and I think that's kind of like the interesting dimension. But what has happened is that no matter how much I was exercising, and I would run on a treadmill for an hour, I would go walks for 4 hours in mountains, and you can say, and also my food intake was hyper restricted, and yet there just, it wouldn't let go. And that's the interesting, that's why we're kind of speaking about this. And I think it kind of really neatly connects to this piece being created in acrylics and then painted over with oil, so you have something inorganic, something that is not edible, kind of being mixed with the organic and presentable. But what I mean to say is that my body just wouldn't let go, and that gonna completely. I think upon coming to London, it just really just threw me off because I was working so hard and then nothing was happening until I completely changed my diet some 2 3 years ago. I became a complete vegan. However, and obviously some changes did happen, but we're speaking about hyper restricted diet. However,
I also think it's interesting to say that before transgressing into veganism, which we think is not necessarily the right choice for everyone, we think it's dependent on body type and how your body feels.
I'm
But
sorry, vegetarian, not vegan. But continue.
but 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 for the investigations that we went through, that was the direction that your body started reacting to and felt more correct for you. And also another
But
important thing about it is that we also went back to eating very unprocessed.
yes, but that's the thing. So like 3 years ago, I really changed my diet and became vegetarian. And again, it was a hyper restricted amount of food that I would eat. But the biggest change happened when you stumbled upon medical medium and you introduced me to medical medium.
Well, I've had this tendency throughout our life, haven't I, to stumble upon things in regards to our habits regarding foods. It's quite amusing actually, because we have tried a lot of different varieties throughout, and from our friends and family, it is always perceived like it's your idea.
Of course,
Even though even though it's I who find and invent and always talk you into all of my new ideas of what I want to test out next.
yeah, but but even that is also such an interesting topic because usually in a relationship, if drastic food changes occur, one usually presumes, or at least from the environment we come from, that it's the girl that is the woman that is inciting that change. But in this case, it has never. I mean, I don't think I like just again giving the comprehension, the Serbian comprehension of how one is dealing with food and how food is looked upon. I don't think I would have ventured into so many interesting spheres. I mean, we've tried blood type diet. We have tried fair amount of things here and there. But I think what I want to speak to you about is the change that has happened after I was introduced to medical medium. And I think he has a couple of books, and they all start with drinking celery in the morning, and then you have the different dimensions and the different aspects of detox detox that's kind of come about. And I think until I've done the detox for almost, well, not for almost, for a full year, and throughout a lot of foods such as eggs, for example, or and yes, just a lot of added, like a lot of food that could contain
Additives and taste enhancers and all of these types of artificially produced products.
yeah, I'm sorry people, I'm a bit off because like it's a bit of a difficult topic for me to speak about, and yet it's a topic that I'm very concerned about because I don't think I would have believed a lot of things that are being like the way we deal with food and a lot of different things that we are a bit like, yeah, we know it's like that, we know it's a bit like this or like that or bad or etc etc, but we actually don't know how bad things are until we've gone if until one actually does a full detox over a longer time. So
I
I
want to
have been, yeah.
I want to chime in there a bit because I feel it's actually important to emphasize that there's a lot of detoxes out there and all detoxes aren't made similar.
No,
This is surface level, very mild detox. It's not something extreme that you do for 2 weeks to give you the feeling that you have done something
no.
and now everything will change. This is a long term investment. And I don't think it's too important what's your source and what you're using. I think it's more the fundamental principles that's important. And that is that you over time remove all of these unfamiliar new chemicals that has been introduced to the human body over the last 100 to 200 years throughout our extremely quick development, especially within chemistry and food production and industry. And this leads to our bodies, who have been developed over millions of years, suddenly being faced with all of these new chemicals that is not used to having to process. It wouldn't naturally occur in nature, which means that what this system is doing for you is that it is over time, of course, trying to avoid reintroducing these pollutants, but it is also helping your body with getting rid of them, so that your
But
liver, spleen, all filter systems in your body's kidneys
yes,
work
because that's
optimally.
what thing was about. My body was so condensed, um, and so full of chemicals, because a lot of like, this is a very difficult topic for everyone, but I think that like, I'm not sure how bodily dissonance, how it has for how long it has existed within our male counterparts, and how it has developed, or if it's a more recent phenomenon. But women have always had traditionally quite ornamental role, where the aesthetics and the appearance have been the leading paradigm when it comes to defining one's worth. And for the last 20, 30 years, I mean, from Twiggy era from until now, we've had a very rigid body image imposed on a female body, where extreme starvation has been introduced. And it's interesting to thinking about it, like, there is like this bizarre religious aspects to it, where the female body has been kind of almost penalized through means that its worth is only achieved through quite severe asceticism. And so a lot of women that I know of, and that have kind of come to know throughout fashion, or just through my life, just even in our dentist office back in Norway, we were 10 to 12 people, I think, mostly women. And a lot of us used sodas to curb hunger. And that's where things kind of get starting to get both closer to the epicenter of what we want to speak about, but also closer to what I'm trying to say. And that is that through different appetite suppressants, through sodas, through a lot of things that are being utilized in food in order to restrict calories, but at the same time give one experience of satisfaction, have put a lot of odd things in their body. I mean, male have put a lot of odd things in their body, but that's a bit of a different discussion. I can't speak for the experiences I don't have, but I can speak to you about my experience. So through this ability to kind of try to hold down the amount of calories, etc., etc., I personally have introduced so many chemicals into my body that my body did not actually have a processing capacity. And that's why medical medium becomes quite important here.
And could I add on that I also think that most of the people that is on this treadmill through life, where they're trying to restrict, they're trying to choose all of these products who are supposedly ticking off all the right boxes, it's low in fat, it's low in calorie, it's low in everything, which then can be consumed in huge quantities, combined with everything from smoking to sodas to chewing gum, which is all there to repress hunger in a way, leads you into this bad cycle where your body, even if you're actually taking in less calories, let's say that you're on something like between 800 to 1200 calories a day on this diet, even though you're still on that, your body probably don't have the ability to actually have that calorie deficiency and utilize it to get rid of anything, because its filtration systems doesn't work. It's stagnated.
exactly. And that's the thing. Like, we're kind of going back to the I was blocked. And that's exactly what is happening because, and I look at it in through this way. In on one sense, for example, if I ate dinner, I would have absolutely extreme and excruciating cravings after every single meal, like absolutely excruciating, um, which would not subside unless I've had soda or something sweet, which again kind of defies the whole point in many ways. So you would have that, and then on the other side, also like when we came to London, I started smoking, and obviously my eating disorder also escalated again, which led to my muscles in the stomach cramping. So my solar plexus being so stiff that when I went to the doctor once for something completely different, uh, he was quite surprised that my stomach was as such as it was. Uh, and this is a bit before, just before London. I thought it was just because of exercise, but it wasn't exactly like that. And the third thing is that we, like, human beings don't think about the micro narrative uh, at all. In the sense that if you take antibiotics, you take one tiny pill, and within the tiny pill, it's probably 1/10 of it that is the active ingredient. So, and I'm saying 1/10 just to be on a generous side, it's usually much less. So if you think about that, how little of a substance can impact your body, you can kind of start to imagine what all of these chemicals that our bodies have developed through 3 billions of years. They've had the ability to live in us in a symbiosis with nature and what is provided within in nature for us to evolve and exist. And the introduction of all the chemicals has really led to a divergence in the evolutionary path, I think, which is going to be interesting to see how it develops. But if your body is blocked, is exposed to all of these chemicals that it can't process, it can't digest, it can't do anything about, and your whole body is spazzing out because the overflow of such is beyond its capacity to eliminate, then we have a global problem.
I think that is already evident with like we do have the increase in weight pandemic that is becoming more and more evident throughout the world, which I personally think has a lot to do with with the quality of food and the additives that we put into it. I think that has a much more to do with it than is actually presented. Um,
But it's also that we're kind of approaching the subject here because my challenge wasn't that I was not disciplined enough. I mean, sure, obviously, well, also in a bit of a different context, but I'll come back to that. But my challenge was the fact that all of the factors that have kind of I've been exposed throughout my life, and also my genetical predisposition. Don't misunderstand me. And well, genetical predisposition, but also the nurture environment, so environment I was exposed to, has led to my metabolism being so slow that was not being effective in getting rid of anything.
let's just
And
say
that's
that
what we're discussing. That's why we have, like, I think that's one of the main reasons why we have the weight pandemic, as you said. I think people's metabolism has slowed down to such an extent that we can't process anymore.
yes, the recommendation of let's say 2000 calories in average for a female, most female bodies aren't able to stay at a stationary state with those calories with most diets that exists today, even though if they are between 1500 to 2000. And it's once again back to everything we're speaking about. I just want to bring that a bit back to the Snickels, because this is one of the things that I've always been thinking about when seeing the Snickels, and that is that I like that you have these pickles that on surface level is unhealthy option of a food. It's at least a vegetable. And then you have this hidden underneath. You have this cube of course, what is something that is fetishized by many and is something that is appreciated by many. We have this cube of sugar, chocolate, caramel inside, but I like this. I like this side of it where you have the unknown inside that you cannot read